Of the Architecture Review Board to order. A roll, please.
Yes, Chair Guyer.
Here.
Vice Chair Liu.
Here.
Board Member Kim.
Here.
Board Member Balte. I believe he'll be arriving soon. And then Board Member Firth is excused today.
Right. Thank you. Okay, we'll start out. Is there anyone who would like to address this board on any item that is not on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public portion, bring it back. Are there any agenda changes, additions, deletions? Okay. Then why don't we start with item number 3, public hearing. 799 Embarcadero Road. Applicant's request for architectural review approval of a 2-story, 6,663 square foot replacement fire station building located on the northwest corner of Embarcadero and Newell Roads, adjacent to the southeasterly edge of Rinconada Park on an 18.27 acre property. Environmental assessment: the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, pursuant to section 15302. Staff?
Yes, orienting myself to the microphone here. The last we were together regarding this fire station project was in June of this year. On the screen, you'll see the 3 conceptual options that were presented at that time. One with a flat roof, one with a gable-y sort of pitched roof, and a third with a curved asymmetrical roof. So they're on the screen there. I wanted to show that to you. At the time, the board was supportive of the clay tile, or what is it called? Yes, terracotta tile. You have the sample at your places there. And there were some other comments that came from the board, and the applicant has returned with a plan set with site sections as requested and other items, details. It's a complete set. So I'll go back to the beginning of this. It is, for the benefit of the public, an 18.27 acre site that includes a Category 1 historic resource and other potential resources, such as the Girl Scout house, that are being reviewed and studied at the moment in connection with the Junior Museum and Zoo project that has not yet come forward for review in a formal application. The other resources nearby is the Rinconada Library and Art Center, which are across the street, across Newell Road. And then it is within a neighborhood of single-family homes across Embarcadero and on the other side of Hopkins. So it is adjacent to the swim center and Rinconada Park, which is characterized by mature trees. Here are views of the existing station, the old view of it in 1948 when it was first constructed with its old fire stations there, fire engines. And then we have some images of today, and on the upper right image you can see that it's pretty well screened by some oleanders at the corner. And then there is this hedge and fence, kind of split rail fence, that separates the site from the park next door. There are 3 protected trees on site: an oak, or 2 oaks, and a redwood. The redwood is adjacent to this flagpole that is a stealth flagpole. We'll talk about that later for cell communications. So the project is to demolish a 15-foot tall 1-story building and construct a 33-foot and 5 inches tall 2-story building with the same functions on the site, not an increase in the number of firefighters that can live there or temporarily live there, or any other increase in demand, that kind of thing. It's just meeting current codes, state codes, safety codes, those kinds of things. On the site, there are the 24-foot special setbacks on Newell and Embarcadero, which means that a building cannot be placed within that setback, but other items can, such as the plaza that's proposed. In this site plan, you can see the 3 protected trees retained. There's some stormwater C3 design to handle the runoff. There's this plaza, which the ARB had in June, asked that there be more focus on that, and it came back bigger with more amenities, including a public art proposal that has not yet gone through the Public Art Commission. There are some other features. It still is an ingress for the fire trucks here and egress out onto Embarcadero as proposed in June. There is this placeholder for a cell tower because the project will be removing the stealth flagpole wireless tower. And then there's this potential site here in the corner. And there's a discussion that has been held so far with the purveyor of cell service about going into this corner and proposing a fake conifer tree. So I'm just showing where that is. So here's the flagpole. Again, it's not part of this application, but as long as we're here, it's I think, good to see where that would be proposed potentially. And then here is where this site would be seeing it from Newell and seeing it from across the street at the Art Center. And then this also shows that there is some shade now on the existing parking lot at the rear. That shade would continue to be there. The parking lot is being adjusted somewhat, so the 50% shade requirement comes in. That fake conifer can actually meet the requirements of the 50% shade if that's the plan that comes forward. Again, these are views of the site from the Rinconada Park, in the proximity of the Junior Museum Zoo and Girl Scout house. And then this is from that path across from the Art Center. And so the site sections provided do show that there are one-story structures on the opposite the roadways. And those are pitched roofs. This was something that the HRB was wrestling with a bit as far as roof options. Again, what the ARB saw back in June on roof options and styles. So what came back to the HRB was this drawing in the lower corner. They were concerned that it was bunker-like and needed to have something more to it. Staff had conversations with the applicant, who came back then with an additional window here. This is in the exercise room, and this split here with a glass feature to break up the box that is made of metal panel. And then over on Embarcadero, and the architect can go into this with more detail, but there was concern that having some better window looks over here. So the window size has increased as far as these clerestory windows. This is not window here. And then from the park, there was an image that was shown that had a shrub of some kind, but that is, I think, not in existence. What's come back is vines here to screen some of that fence and provide a pleasant view. And it also shows the tree that is showing up in the site plan and landscape plans to mitigate or interrupt the views. You can also see this window that they added since the HRB meeting. Okay, and then one other thing that came up was with the HRB, a discussion about, borrowing some features from the Rinconada Library. The architect will explain how that was done in the original set with that terracotta tile as a nod to this and also the wall. So I'll let them go. One more image is just showing you these fake cell tower trees, just so you get an idea of what could be coming forward in a future application. Okay. Thank you, and I'm here for questions.
Okay. Is the applicant here?
Just to confirm, Board Member Balte arrived during the staff presentation, so thank you.
Do you have an advance clicker?
Tell you what, while they're getting ready, either of you have any questions of staff?
I have a quick question. On page 6 of the staff report, Under building finishes and details, that first paragraph, the last sentence of the first paragraph says glass roll-up vehicle doors are proposed on both front and rear elevations. When I look at the plans, the elevation facing Embarcadero looks like those are actually side folding doors. So I want to get some confirmation on whether they're the same glass roll-up doors or not.
Okay, I'll let the architect address that.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. You've noticed or looking at the elevations closely. So in talking with the fire department, the side opening will be used in the front because those are fast acting and very safe and durable. So the less expensive roll-up will be used in the back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you have 10 minutes.
Okay. Chairman Guyer and board members, Balte, Kim, and Lou, thanks for seeing us again. So I just want to also express that this is a great opportunity for us as architects because the topic and the site, all that is extremely interesting. And I want to make mention that about modernism because I think there have been discussions about that. And in our view, modernism as a style or a movement in general, but mid-century in particular, had there's really about some principles rather than actually forms. It's about principles, and that's why we believe that modernism today still endures. It's the same principles, and those principles included industrialism and technology. A belief in that, and that those would be in service to humanity, or to make, say, livable forms. There's limited reference to historical styles in it. So they don't look back. It's all about today. It's all about what is relevant in today's environment. A lack of ornament. Well, these are all things, of course, we've all had in school, right? It's just a reminder. And then, of course, form follows function. So somehow out of the program and sort of solving problems, real problems, that the form of the building would come. So I'll take a minute about talking about some of the functional elements, and then that'll help us decide about the form. So the first point I would make is that in designing fire stations, the first thing we do is we worry about safety. And the whole reason why, or one of the reasons why we're doing this station is because of safety, and the fire department coming to us and saying, we have a really unsafe situation where we have fire trucks that are backing up from Embarcadero, right, into the station. And there are, of course, children and other people coming along Embarcadero. So what we want to have is a through or a drive-through station. And so in order to get this station, which is approximately twice as much square footage, onto the site, and you can imagine the major constraint besides the desire to do this are the trees. So we're saving 3 major trees on the site. And not surprisingly, the footprint ends up being pretty much the same footprint for a 2-story building as a single-story building, with some adjustments in order to accomplish the program. And the first programmatic element is when you're putting an engine onto a station in a drive-through, you need the prevailing thought is 65 feet, or 60 feet minimum, 65 feet ideally. When we don't have that kind of room, so we push the station forward a bit, about 5 feet. So that is the apparatus bay, and so we have about 55 feet, and still that wasn't enough. So what we did was we widened the doors a little bit. So actually, we're not completely perpendicular until we're actually inside the station. So that gives you an indication how tight this site is. So fitting between the trees, getting this in, getting all the turning radiuses, et cetera, was really important. And then you see also where the entry is. So current entry is off of Embarcadero, and you walk across the drive where the apparatus are coming out, and people with bicycles and things getting registered, it's not safe. So we said, okay, let's put the entry on Newell. And so that's why essentially we have these little pods or squares left over on the site in terms of the building footprint, and the section closest to Newell is where we put the building entry. So getting into the plan, from that entry, you'll see that you come in, and then what you have is a washroom, that's just like an office on the right, and a public restroom, and then there's a low wall with a door on it so the public don't come into the station. Then you have the apparatus bay, and then, of course, support for the apparatus. So those are all pretty much what you have to do based upon this footprint. And then upstairs, we went through several options with the fire department, and of course, it's all about speed, right? So what we're trying to do is trying to get the firefighters into the apparatus as quickly as possible. So what they and us, we decided was to put in the day room is where they are most of the time, put that closest back towards the entry stair, and there's also a pole that goes straight down. I don't know if you noticed that in the plan, but so that is the closest area, and then they wanted the dorms, the sleeping areas, away on the park side of the building. And then we discussed with you during our study session, we were going through three styles. I did mention to you that the fire department had a preference for the flat roof building and also for the terracotta, and we discussed that. And I think pretty much everyone seemed to be in line with the terracotta, and there was more discussion about whether it should be flat or whether it should be sloped. And I think what came to us also during the study session is like, well, guys, if you want to do slope, if you want to proceed with the slope, these are some things that we would ask you to come back and address, and that's what we've come back today for. So if I just note that the one point, it's kind of hard to read on the far left, but somehow you said we need to break the mass up. If we're going to use these sort of cubes or flat roofs, we need to either vary the height, maybe we need to add some windows, and you also said that we need to activate the corner. We're concerned about the kids queuing up for the crosswalks, and maybe we can do something more to do something in the corner. And then most particularly, you said, let's think about the entry plaza and sort of make that whole pod there more welcoming. So what we're showing you today is something developed in the past 3 weeks. It actually is something that the HRB has not seen, but many of your comments are really the same kind of concerns that they had, and I think that we've addressed that. So this is the rendering of the most current design. And as I mentioned to you, so what we've done is the side gray boxes have been lowered. The center terracotta box has been raised about, I think, 1.5 feet, and the others were lowered 1.5 feet, so it's about 3 foot difference between the two kinds of elements. And then I'll show you some plans on the corner, and then the civic design that we've done for the plaza. And then just again to recall the material selection that we had. So firefighters, fire stations, if you ask a firefighter what they want, they'll say, give me a brick fire station, give me that traditional station. But we want to do something of our time. So terracotta, and we want to do rain screen these days because of energy concerns. The rain screen has continuous rigid insulation on the outside of the building, and then the facade, the terracotta is hung off that, or in this case, terracotta or metal panel. So this is new technology related to green building and reflective of our time, of course. So that's what we proceeded with. And of course, we like the terracotta because we could refer back to the screen around the existing library, which is built of terracotta. And then as a second primary color, we chose to have this sort of dark gunmetal gray also within the library complex. So those are the two colors. We chose to tie the two projects through color rather than necessarily shape. And other things we did were, for instance, the wall that surrounds, they want a really abuse-resistant wall, so we pulled in, there's a cast concrete wall at the front of the library, a new one, and so we pulled that same thing into the surround of the new structure. And so this is resultant, as again, elevation or perspective. And note the sign that's at the corner. So what this really says is that this is a civic building, and this is what we discussed with you. Should it be civic? Should it be residential? And I think the determination was, we all agreed, it should be a civic gesture. We're coming into a civic area. We're coming into Rincon Park, and so the signage here denotes that, as does the building. And then what we did was we widened the area along the corner to give a little more room for the kids in the crosswalk. And of course, we have a stream bed, dry stream bed for water conservation. And then we've added some landscaping, California native landscaping through here. And then on the plaza itself, because we have a grade change, we used things like steps and ramps, and then we added elements such as benches and water fountains. There's even a bike area now, of course, for lead, as well as a bike repair station that's there as well. And so those things together with addressing your concerns about the facade. And so we've broken up the boxes and added more fenestration, as was mentioned. And of course, there's almost I would call it more of a cubist style of design here. So it's more sculptural in terms of the front entry elevation. And then the rear elevations have quite a bit of trees. We've actually added more. And I know that there was some concern about variation, and as I mentioned, we have varied the box. So let me just remove some trees so you can actually see what's behind them. So the lower box, the dorm box is, as I said, 3 foot lower than the main box, and then as is the entry cube as well. And then the wall, so that wall has now been, there's a creeping vine across an entire concrete wall, so that actually begins to mimic what's there now, which is a wood fence, of course, with planting on it. And then this is just the front-on elevations and side elevations with that wall. And I know one of the comments was thinking about that wall and its relationship to the metal panel above, and our decision was to flush it out. We thought that would be really nice, so the metal wall and surface and the concrete wall surface are in the same plane. Architecturally be interesting. So then the fifth facade. You know, the other thing I think that was really nice about your suggestion to increase the height differences is that we now have better place to hide some of the mechanicals, including PV panels, and PV panels today have to be changed over time. And then there's shadow studies in here as well. Net shadow in red is very small, and that is our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant?
I have a quick question. Could you tell me how many firefighters there are at the station at one time?
They will be using the same number of firefighters, which should be 3, so there are 3 rooms. One of the rooms has got another bed in it, and that's for what we call a ride-along, so they have training people who come. So at maximum, there will be 4. And in terms of the parking in the back, you can also note that you have to deal with shift change, so there's more than 4 parking spaces because at 8 o'clock, the new crew comes on, old crew goes out, so actually, and we can't really park them like across the street. We've got to keep them on site.
Are there any guest parking requirements?
Guest parking, unfortunately, there's not enough room on the site. There's no requirement for that,
Okay.
other than the accessible parking. So I know when I go to the station, I actually park at the library and I walk across the street, and I think that's probably what guests will have to do.
Okay. And then just one final question. I know that with today's regulations, there's like an exhaust capture system that has to happen inside the fire station.
Right.
I didn't see any, maybe I missed it, but how does that work? Where does that exhaust come out of the station?
They're called Plymouth or Neuterman systems. Basically, there's a hose, like a dryer hose that goes to the tailpipe, and then it goes up. So there are tracks above. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why stations are very tall. It's actually 1.5 stories compared to other houses. It's about 18-foot floor to floor on the first elevation because of all the stuff that goes up there.
So once it goes to the ceiling, does it exit out the side of the building, or does it actually continue up through the second floor?
It goes
and out
up
the top?
through the second floor and up through the up to the roof.
All right, thank you.
Anything else?
Very quickly, if I could, on the west side of the site facing the park to the, well, as I'm looking at the drawing to the right, there seems to be an area in the parking lot that, as I read the keynote, says an emergency generator and then trash enclosure. Can you just tell me more completely what's in that section of the site?
Yes. Actually, I'm wondering maybe I can go back to to a floor plan. Oh, sorry, I was going the wrong way. Can you do it? I don't know. I might have. Go back. Probably almost to the beginning. Yeah. Oh, okay. One more back. Okay. So on the, you're talking about on the left, so there's a generator. So from the orange part on the left, above that, the first set of boxes, that's trash enclosure. And we like to put covering on that, but leave sides open so the air can come through. And then there's emergency generator. So part of the Essential Service Act is that if there is an emergency and we lose power to the building, we need to maintain power to the fire station for 72 hours. So there's a generator there with a diesel belly tank, and that powers the station.
Thank you.
I have one more question. Just kind of curious. I noticed that there are these, firewalls in certain areas of the building.
Right.
So with regards to the pole,
yes,
if you're looking at it in plan, I know that horizontally, yes, that's covered with the firewalls, but how does that work vertically? Is there some kind of a filter or?
Okay, so you have to separate the apparatus bay, which is S occupancy, from the R occupancy, which is above. And it's a 1 hour separation. So actually what happens is there's a closet around that. You can see in plan there's a closet on the second floor.
So, so the separation actually happens at the walls. There's no separation between the floors per se.
The floor is also rated 1 hour between the apparatus bay and the floor above.
But there's an opening where the pole is, right?
Yes, but see where the opening is. You see the word that says day room?
Mm-hmm.
Just to the left of the day, you can see the X where the pole is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a closet. We call it a pole closet. And so that 1 hour rating comes up into the closet, and the door has a closer on it.
Understood. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this board on this issue? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public portion, bring it back to the board. Peter, you want to start?
Sure. Good morning. Thank you for the very clear presentation. I do find myself persuaded, as I was back in April, about your site planning choices, about the need for the drive-through fire station. All that makes sense. I appreciate the complexity of a constrained site, et cetera. I have, I guess, two concerns. They both have to do with the building, in my mind, just looking a little bit too boxy. I appreciate your wanting to make it modern and support that. Other buildings in the area were modern for their time, and this should be the same. However, I think it just looks boxy, especially the apparatus, the two-story apparatus bay, and my biggest concern is the element to the left of that as you're looking from Embarcadero, the dormitory rooms. I see no change to the floor plan whatsoever from the presentation you gave us in April. And I think, at least I made a pretty clear statement. I thought that the two-story element next to the park was inappropriately tall. It's right at the property line, or what people would construe to be the property line. I haven't changed my opinion on that. I go back to the site, I look at the plans. I'm trying very hard to want it to be modern and understand the boxiness maybe is appropriate or at least necessary. And I'm not persuaded by the dormitory element next to the park. My question about the emergency generator had to do with wondering if you've explored the possibility of lowering that element and perhaps stretching the building along the boundary line there into that area where you have a trash enclosure and a generator. Perhaps you could put the generator in the very back corner between the parking stalls, which is not really useful for anything else. But it strikes me that it's worth exploring somehow lowering the height of the element next to the park to be 1 story or a sharply sloped roof, or do something to make it not just a 2-story gray wall. In my trips to that site, there are people relaxing in the park there, and the shadow studies confirm that this will have a big impact on the park, on the use of that part of the park. I think it will also just look not the way a civic building should look. It's not an attractive something people are proud of from the park. Rather, it's just a tall box, the part you see from the park. I contrast that to what I see from Newell Road, which I find attractive. The main entrance, that rendering you showed, I think is a very admirable piece of architecture. The entrance looks good. I can easily see the citizens liking this building, over time it becoming part of our cultural fabric. I really wish I could say the same for the other side of the building, and I can't. My other thought has to do again with the proposed metal paneling for the what I called the gray box, and I'm concerned that that'll end up being reflective. I'm also concerned that it might not pass the test of time as far as a civic building lasting for 50, for 100 years without needing undue maintenance. Maintenance doesn't always happen on public buildings. You want to design for something that's really bulletproof. Have you considered just a poured-in-place concrete, textured, colored, something like that? You would have the same architectural effect, and you may find that it's just a lot more long-lasting without. That was my initial reaction looking at the elevations, was what a cool use of concrete. Get somebody good to build that and it'll look great. I find your use of the terracotta very nice. I think it's appropriate for a fire station, and the detailing you're doing does hark back to what's done at the library, and I think it's appropriate. So again, my biggest concern is the massing next to the park, and then some thought about the metal panels. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming back to the board and giving us that very clear presentation. I wanted to thank you for some of the changes that I've seen and that you've made, such changes as giving some more thought to the corner and the crosswalk areas, keeping the two separate bay entries and two separate doorways, the entry plaza, the more civic plaza area there. And also, there seems to be some change in proportions of the materials. I think originally the metal panel or concrete or the gray areas were a little bit smaller in proportion, but I like that you've varied that to be a larger proportion in contrast to the smaller proportions of the terracotta. I know originally I had some opinions regarding some of the proportions and maybe even the materials. I think with the proportions that you have going on right now, I think it feels much more natural and something that looks aesthetically pleasing. I think while I like the corner cutout for the crosswalk areas, I'm just wondering if it could be even a little bit wider. And the reason I have that thought is because I was looking at the, could you go to the slide that shows that corner actually? And it was a colored plan right there. I think you get a lot of both pedestrian and bicycle traffic coming from Newell as well. And I know that the curb cut at the actual corner there is a very small slope, but I think the actual portion of non-sloped curb cut as you make your way around that corner to cross over Embarcadero becomes a little bit too thin. And so I'm thinking maybe that plaza could be, or not plaza, but the what do you call it there? Paved corner could be a little bit more generous to the Newell side. I noticed that you have a water fountain at the Civic Plaza. I almost thought, maybe it could be nice if the water fountain was actually at that corner area where, the kids riding to and from school and home, maybe it becomes a regular stop for them to come into that corner and to take a sip of water. I'm just wondering how many people are going to actually use the water fountain when you've got to go up the steps or the ramp to that Civic Plaza there. I appreciate the benches, the seating. I think that the change in level there is actually quite nice. Thank you for the bicycle parking as well. I think overall, I realize it's somewhat of a utilitarian building, right? It's a civic building, it's a fire station, and I understand that. I think, having said that, the corner treatment at the Newell Embarcadero corner, I think it's acceptable the way it is, but I would really encourage you to see if there's a way of breaking that up a little bit more. I think the HRB made some similar comments to that corner. I think actually I do have a quick question. So you did mention in your presentation that some changes have been made that the HRB did not see. Is that change in height between the metal panel areas and the terracotta areas, was that something the HRB did not see?
I can answer now? Oh, okay. They saw the change in elevation. I think that the changes since HRB were primarily in the fenestration, the windows and that sort of thing.
Okay, so yeah, I would just encourage you, if we can take another look at the corner perhaps. It feels a little bit too boxy still, but I think overall it's a very handsome building. I think it's coming along very nicely, and I appreciate the thought that you've put into our comments and addressing the firefighters' needs. And I think it's going to be a great contribution back to the city and to the community. So thank you.
Alex?
So thank you. You gave a great presentation, and the drawing set was very complete, and I think you've made a lot of improvements from the last time we saw it. Generally, I can support the project. I think, like Board Member Balte, my main concern was from the park side view of the project. I guess in my mind, when I was looking at the set, I wasn't quite so worried about having the two-story element right on the on the edge of the park. But I was just, in my mind, it was more of the character of just having a concrete wall with a creeping fig. It seemed a little out of character for the area. I mean, I would just say, just by comparison, and I don't think you're that far off from the rest of the park. But I guess I would say, like, the pool building is like concrete block, but it's like a warmer color, and there's a trellis. The substation has like a slat, I guess we would call it like a wood screen fence around it. And it's just a different palette. It's a little bit more open. It seems to me that you have constraints with the diesel generator, and you would want a solid wall around the generator and whatnot. But it would seem to me that if there's a way of making the fence a little bit more open, even if it's just part, just on one side, maybe if it's not solid all the way around, or if there is a way to sort of enhance the planting around actually on the park side of the property, right? And I think you're proposing to remove the oleanders, which is fine with me, that's good. But it seems like there could be more on the park edge. Because I mean, there are picnic areas right up against the fire station. So I think I guess that would be a question for your landscape design. And then also, I understand there's the park boundary, but I would imagine the project boundary could be different, right? I mean, could the project boundary extend into the park or no?
The project boundary and the park boundary are the same, though, since it is a city project, enhanced plantings in the park that would be, associated with this project, I think would be just a coordination with the master plan, with the landscape architect for the city, yeah.
Okay. Does this project then as it is now, does this have to go to Parks and Rec for review, like the Parks and Rec Commission or whatnot?
The plantings in the park, I'm not sure whether that needs to go to the Park and Rec. It's not a different use.
Right.
I think, when it's a use consideration, that would go to the Parks and Rec. And certainly they're not proposing to change the park boundary,
Sure.
and certainly that would have to go all the way up to council.
You would go to the voters, actually.
Yeah, and beyond council, right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that was my main concern, and then I think I did have a secondary concern, which is your Newell Road facing portion of the building. I think for the public, that's going to be like the biggest change that they're going to really see. I mean, the rest of the building, I think, it's different, but it's not that far off from the existing building. When I was looking at the metal siding that you were proposing, I was actually worried that it would be too light, and then the sample is actually very dark. That's actually much darker than I would normally see in it. So I think that's actually better. But I was actually wondering if there were any other alternates. And I'm not going to propose anything in particular, but I was just wondering if there's another option. And it seems like with the HRB, there was a contingent of the HRB that was concerned about the character of the building, that was a little out of character. And it seems to me that the metal siding would be the one place where it could be more residential looking. It could still be modern, but it seems to me that would be the one place that you could make a change. So, but generally I do support the project. So.
Thank you. Okay, I wasn't here for the first go-around, so these are sort of my first inputs. I agree. To me, the building is just too boxy. I mean, I understand the whole concept of modern, that sort of thing, but first of all, part of it is also that I think is fighting the modern aspect of it is just the location in the background with the trees, everything else. Not that I expect it to be a fuzzy wood building, one story. That's not really, necessary. I understand the requirement for the 2 stories, so I don't really have a problem with the volume of it. It's more a matter, because I've done a couple of fire stations, and I mean, let's face it, that's the way they're built now, in one side, out the other. It's just, that's the way they need to be. I like the terracotta. I just have a real problem with the metal. And again, part of it is also what my fellow board member said here. As with so many other things like this, or even the existing one, that is, is approaching 70 years old. I just think from a longevity standpoint, I don't think the metal's going to last 70 years. Or if it is, it's going to be a horrendous maintenance issue 30 years down the road. I don't know with concrete, but it is a viable thing that still has a modern edge to it. And let's face it, there's not a longevity issue with concrete. So, I mean, I don't really, I'm not telling you what the material should be. I just don't think metal is the right solution. The other thing is that yesterday was the first time I'd seen the sort of option 1, 2, and 3. I think probably I would have voted more for option 3 with a sloped roof. I don't think, like I said, you need to copy what's across the street, but this building, if you look at it just standing by itself, it's a very delicate, nice-looking building, but unfortunately, I don't really think it relates to anything around the area other than maybe the terracotta. I'd like to see more possibly of a sloped roof. I mean, not a hip roof, but a sloped roof, maybe with a little bit of an overhang, so it does somewhat relate to the buildings across the street. The angle could be different, that sort of thing. It's just the whole idea of more of a top to it, a cap on it. I think that would eliminate a lot of the boxiness of it. And because it's mainly usually the perception of boxes when you have a flat roof and no overhang. It's almost a given that you create that. And the thing is also, from like the view we're looking at, this is not a very, not that it needs to be inviting, but it's a very, I don't know, I have a problem with this as far as the front entry to the building. I think it's something, and again, it may work in some other situation, but based on the location and what people have been used to for the last 50 years, this is an awful drastic change. And now, I'm not saying that that's not always a good thing, but I think in this particular case, I think that needs to be toned down a little bit. As far as, let's see, like I said, I like the plan. I like the the other thing is I was thinking if you're going to go to this sort of edge, and this is going, the first thing that I thought about is with the metal panel is to do something like the DeYoung Museum did. If you're going to go out on a limb like that, then it makes it more of a relationship to across the street with the Edward Durrell Stone sort of mimicking. Not that I'm saying it's appropriate here, but that was sort of the first thing that caught my eye. Where then I could see, okay, it's a definite statement. That's why the metal is there, rather than just, it's an alternative. Anyway, like I said, I'm not expecting a mini DeYoung Museum standing there, but that was just the idea that it's something that would relate to across the street in a very unusual fashion. Any other?
Could you clarify that? You mean the copper color, or
well, no, I'm talking about the actual texture of the finish itself. Let's face it, it's a huge. I mean, you've seen it, I'm sure. It's a huge building with small holes around there, and in that scale, I think it's way too big. But in this scale, I think it might be interesting. And again, it relates to the fence, for instance, that you saw across the street. So it's a way to pull the variation in. Any comments from anybody else?
Yeah, I think I was curious about the gate that you see here in this perspective, the more open gate. Are there some details of that gate? What material is it? What is it painted? And I was also wondering, can that be used all the way around the site instead of the fully solid concrete? I don't think I have so much a problem with the two-story facade against the park, but I do think that the fence there, with it being a solid concrete, might feel a little bit too harsh, even with the vine on it. I'm wondering if you can use this kind of a gate instead, this kind of a fence design instead, or maybe even something like a gabion fence, where at least it feels a little bit more open and a little bit warmer and inviting. I forgot to mention earlier, but I really like the slit that you have going on here for the entry at this box here. I think with regards to Chair Guyer's comments about the entrance, I like that the door is wood. Maybe there's an opportunity to use a little bit more of that wood to create an even warmer, inviting entry, but I think your choice in doing that was appreciated by me. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, I think that's it.
Can we respond? Is that
Pardon me?
appropriate?
Pardon me?
Would you like me to? I can give some general response. Obviously, we'll
Sure,
have time
if you'd like.
to flush it out in
Okay.
detail. Board Member Balte, I want to address your concern, because certainly we did hear that concern about the height and all that along that part. So we did drop it 1 foot, no, 1.5 feet, that box. So what we did was we took the parapet of the gray box down 1.5 feet, and then we raised the parapet of the terracotta up 1.5 feet, so there's a 3-foot delta. It's still not a gravel stop, and as we know, we could take it down all the way to gravel stop. The other thing we could do is we could talk to the fire department. Right now, I believe we have 9-foot ceilings. That's what they like to have, but we know in many residences they're 8 foot. So if there's concern about the height, maybe we can work on that a little bit and see if we can reduce. But the problem is, and I know why you were also suggesting perhaps to consider going out towards the generator, is to maybe make the rooms thinner and pull them back off the fence. Certainly we'll take a look at that as well. So I want to say we did not ignore. We'll take another pass at your concern regarding the height of the building along that edge.
If I can chime in quickly then, if we're going to do this kind of discussion, I'm convinced by my board members saying, I think it's not a matter of the height, it's a matter of how it looks from the park.
Okay.
And ultimately, I think you may well have a 2-story building there, but it has to appear appropriate, it has to appear pleasant, something when you're having a picnic with your family you don't mind looking at.
Okay.
Right now, I wouldn't characterize it that way.
So we will go back and take a look at that side. So that was one topic, inclusive of we will take a look at the material and whether or not it could be more transparent somehow, perhaps even pick up some of the, I don't know, I guess for instance, the fence around the library has some level of openness to it, and so we'll take a look at other materials there as well. As far as the metal panels, also we'll take a look at other materials, and I hear the concern. And as we know, the first choice of the terracotta is exactly because it's forever. You never paint it, you never maintain it. And yes, there are concrete materials, so we'll take a look at the concrete materials. We are trying to use a rain screen, so there are thin concretes that can be used in a rain screen manner. So we'll take a look at that as well. There's some landscape issues. I didn't know if you'd like our landscape architect to address that on the corner, but I don't. I know we tried to make it as large as possible. I don't know if there is any additional. So is landscape architect not here? No. Okay, so we will give some additional direction to the landscape architect to see if we can improve the dimension of that area. And I think actually the drinking fountain idea is a great idea. I mean, I would love that if I was a kid and coming home and be able to drink from there. Dark. In any case, we do appreciate your comments, and we will address all of them. So thank you very much.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
I just had one last comment, and I guess maybe this may be for staff, but on the public art component, which is tentatively proposed for the plaza, I was wondering if there had been any discussion about putting something on the park side, like a mural or something on the park side.
I hadn't heard, but that's certainly something that the applicant who would be meeting with the Parks and Recreation Commission, the Public Works staff are here, so they may know if there's a date.
Matt Roschke, Public Works Engineering. The Public Art Liaison, Elise DiMarzo, has informed us that they've selected an artist, and the idea was to put the art in the front plaza on Newell Street. And the artist they selected is tends towards mechanical art that is interactive, where you might turn a crank and something happens.
Good.
And he had some very nice examples of his work. So.
Okay, that sounds great, actually. That sounds perfect for all the kids going by the fire station. Yeah.
Amy, can I make one other response point to one of the concerns? I do want to just, and we didn't have time to go through this, but, and I also appreciate Board Member Balte, you're saying that it's, as long as we address some of the issues about shadows, but in terms of the height, you can see it. So there is a difference to the shadow, but the delta is actually on that side very small. So it's that funny shaped thing on the left. The one on the upper right is actually, the casting is from the wall, not from the building. So there's a shadow created by the building into the parking lot, but the wall itself that's surrounding is casting a shadow. And then the second story at the dorm room has that, does have a small, but nonetheless, it's a concern. I think that we will definitely address the issues of the feel of that side, so it's more interesting, but at least the shadow part was not a lot in our opinion.
So you pretty much know what we're thinking then?
Yes, we do.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think that'll be it then.
So one possibility as far as, we need to continue the public hearing on this, right, is what I'm hearing. And we'd want to, suggest that there are some dates out there, January 19th being the first possible date. If the applicant's architect is...
That's pretty much okay. See what they can work with.
Yeah, reckon the holidays, but,
Okay. Are you comfortable with coming back at that time?
Yes.
Okay. That'd be fine.
We have to make a motion and whatnot. So I will move that we continue the project to January 19th, 2017.
Okay, can I get a second?
A second to that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. We'll see you on the 19th then. The only other item we have is the approval of the minutes. Are there any comments before, of the minutes? Other than the fact that, my God, sometimes you begin to see when it's like this, either people do a whole lot of talking or it just seems like, I mean, this is a mini book by the time you get done. 24 pages.
I'd like to reiterate my comments from last time. This is an inappropriate way to produce minutes. Just flat out, it's inappropriate. The public cannot use this.
I think inappropriate's a bit harsh, but I think it's a waste of paper. Yeah, I mean, realistically, every word verbatim is. I think all of us probably trust your judgment to surmise what the comments were, and it's probably, maybe something like this is where this stays online, and if somebody wants to see the verbatim report, then they can do that. But anyway, okay, so that's approved. Then I think
Well, we have to make a motion. Oh,
we just did.
for the minutes? I don't think there's...
I'll move that we approve the minutes for the November 3rd meeting.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay, there is a subcommittee item, but I'll move the board. Oh,
Chair, just one comment. I noticed that our agenda is a little bit out of order here. Before you adjourn, though, under the board members' comments and announcements, I just had a question for the board about the staff reports and the amount of information that we provide in terms of what an applicant is proposing in the staff, what we write in the staff report as to what an applicant is proposing in terms of, window detailing or all the kinds of, details that you might look at when you're looking at a plans. Does the board find that helpful in our staff reports, or is there an opportunity for us to present something that's a little more concise and not have staff get into sort of these tables of all these different changes that are being contemplated? If that is helpful, we can certainly continue to do that, but I was interested in some brief feedback, and we can continue the conversation if we need to with Wynn too.
Probably first of it would be better if all 5 of us were here for that, but I'm okay with the way it is. But you know, some of the stuff is just, I mean, to me is a bit, you know, I mean, excessive. I don't really need it, but then I've been doing this for umpteen years, so I mean, it's a little easier for me, but that's why I said we should probably have all 5 members here before we make a decision on that. Any other input?
So we should not make any comments now, or?
No, go ahead and make a comment.
Well,
I'm just saying, make no final decision on it.
I mean, I find that on the positive side, I always appreciate and enjoy reading what staff has to say. It's usually got some interesting points on how the design is either started out or changed, and you guys have talked to the applicants a lot, and I typically find that very helpful to read. I like to read it after I've looked at the stuff myself, but I find that somehow it's just so much paper,
right?
And I'm just wishing you could leave a lot of it on a website or download or email somehow. I mean, this is a book. I didn't read all of this, and none of us did, I'm sure, and I don't need to. And a lot of what we're deciding doesn't need a full printed copy of an arborist report in here. One paragraph in the staff report summarizing
you know, the stack we got, well, it's like, I pulled it apart, so the front half, or the front 20% was mainly what I was interested in. The rest of it I scanned through, but I don't know. I could easily go online for that, I agree.
Yeah, I'd be very happy if those were just available on the website, and I can download them like any member of the public if I want to dive into it, and keep the staff report to, you know, I would tell my people no more than 5 pages. Just figure out a way to say it in that many pages, because that's what gets read. Same comment as with the minutes. If you keep it short, it actually gets used and read and appreciated.
But I do like your input on it, how there's nothing worse than, sitting up here and then all of a sudden realizing that it's totally different than what staff was thinking about it. I'd like to get your input on there. But like I said, I agree that a lot of the back, which, maybe a good idea, but 5 copies of it. I guess it's the same concept we talked about as the full-size print versus the half-size prints. That sort of thing is most of us are fine with the half-size print, so we'll leave it at that option. If somebody wants them larger, that's fine, but not everybody. To me, that's just a waste of paper. Our quote, paperless society, we use 3 times more now than we ever did, it seems like. Any other comments from anyone?
Well, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, and tell me if it's not, but I'm concerned about how our board is relating or interacting with the HRB. And I think this application is yet another example of where we're not really sure what to make of their comments. They're not sure how they should interact with us. There doesn't seem to be much of a back and forth between our reviews. So on this particular project about the fire station, just as an example of process, I'm still not sure what they were supposed to be commenting on or about. When I diligently went through and looked at their meeting and listened to what they all had to say, and they're basically talking about the architecture as we would. And I didn't really get much of a sense about what the historical aspect of the architecture is. And I think it would be really helpful to have some sort of a liaison or meeting or some way of somebody from the ARB and the HRB being able to inform each board of what's going on and sort of linking together. I think that might be a lot that I think the HRB board is a larger board and doesn't often come up with a strong point of view, perhaps. But something's just not working, in my opinion.
As a suggestion, maybe we can, in the new year, we can get the chair and vice chair of both of the boards together and have an initial conversation to talk about how the 2 boards work well together or how they can work better together. And we can even follow that up with a joint session if you thought that was appropriate.
Well, and I guess that I had that same sort of concern for this. I could see when we're talking downtown and some of the other things, but I don't really even understand why was the HRB involved in this. So it wasn't the magnificent structure that's there now, or was it because it's 70 years old? Is that basically the concept?
Well, I think Amy can. Oh, Amy's not here. Amy turned into Claire. The park itself has got some historic significance, and because this is located on that property, we wanted to send it to the HRB to get their feedback from that perspective. Not that the existing fire station had any historic significance necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, so it seemed to me that this was kind of almost a one-off. It didn't have to go to the HRB, but planning felt that it would be beneficial
Like I
to get their
said,
input.
okay, yeah, because I didn't really see the,
Right.
I didn't really see
But I did see that in the
Actually, not a
HRB.
one-off, because if you look at like 429 University, the same issue came up, and I would anticipate actually that it would come up. It'll come up again anytime there's something, and it's not the issue of the historic structure. It's like if the neighborhood it's our subjective issue, right, of the context.
I take that back, saying one-off then.
Yeah.
But it did sound like in the minutes from the HRB meeting that either the chair or the vice chair would be here today. Unfortunately, it looked like they couldn't.
But I experienced this with the Avenidas project, where I actually went and spoke to the HRB, and it was determined that was an inappropriate thing to do. So I respect that, but at the same time, I'm incredibly frustrated that there just doesn't seem to be a communication. They really didn't get the way we were looking at that project. I don't think we understood their angle on it.
But in all fairness, isn't that usually, I mean, it seems like it's because of how quickly these projects, the applicant requests how quickly these projects move, and then you really can't have a logical flow of one looks at it and the other one looks at it, that sort of thing.
You're right, Robert. I'm feeling a little bit like we're being so cautious to not overstep some sort of quasi-judicial legal principle that we're not just talking to each other more. And if the HRB understood the angle we saw it at, and we understood their take on it, we're going to do the applicant a world of good by just coming to cleaner answers quicker.
Okay. So since we don't have this as an agendized topic, I think we should probably stop the conversation here. And if the board is interested in us, in my suggestion of the chair and the vice chair next year getting together and having an initial conversation, is that valuable to?
Well, either that or in something like this, the pre-meetings that we have, would it be worthwhile having a representative at one of those?
We can certainly explore that as well.
Something like that.
We can
where at
explore
least then, the chair and the vice chair would be attuned to exactly where they were coming from.
Okay. The message is clear. We want to tighten up this review process, and we'll figure out some ways to do that.
Okay.
Separate question. The revised findings that the city council approved?
Yeah, I think we had talked with the chair and vice chair about having a retreat, and where we would bring the findings as a discussion point to familiarize the ARB with the new standards.
And we want to do that sometime before the end of the year. Is that what we're talking about, or not?
I think before the next, before your first January meeting. So
okay, so that would be before the
meeting
19th or something like that?
Something around there.
Okay. Okay, that's it then. Thank you.